Have you ever wondered, could I spend my life doing something, pursuing something, and getting it, achieving it, and then waking up the next day only to realize that you've been pursuing, that you've been chasing the wrong thing? If you've ever pondered this, thought about this, imagined this, or not, stick around. Being successful is something that we all strive for. It's something that we've all heard talked about. It's something that many of us, if not all of us, have at one point in time talked about ourselves, being successful. Now, success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What success means to me may not mean the same to this particular individual or this particular group. How I see success, what it looks like to me, it may not be viewed the same way from culture to culture, from ethnic group to ethnic group, from gender to gender. What may be successful to a man may not necessarily be successful to a woman. But the fact is that the term, the whole concept of being successful is something that we all strive for. It's something that we wake up every day pursuing, chasing, trying to obtain. But have you ever thought about actually achieving the goal, achieving the accomplishment, gaining the success that you wanted or that really you thought you wanted? Many individuals have did just that. They've set out on this quest to gain some things, to accomplish some things, to even possess some things, only to find that once they have achieved, once they have possessed that which they thirst for, that which they chased after, but yet there was still an empty feeling down on the inside of them. The question really becomes, is it possible to become successful doing the wrong thing? And the answer to that question is yes. One of the ways that God has put in His Word, has instructed us, has allowed us to be able to not find ourselves in this particular situation, I believe can be found in 2 Corinthians, the 10th chapter. When Paul was talking, he was writing to the Corinthian church, his second letter, and he was talking about boasting. Well, the Corinthians and Paul, they had kind of this love-hate relationship. Paul often reminded them and had to remind them, which he should not have, about who he was to them, and that was a spiritual father. And no matter how many other leaders came into the Corinth area, no matter how many individuals came and taught them and imparted into them and equipped them and trained them, he was still their father, that he held a place in their lives that nobody else could rival. He sat in a chair that nobody else really could sit in. And as he continually reminded the Corinthians of this, in this particular chapter, in 2 Corinthians 10, Paul begins to talk about not boasting beyond his measure. That God had given him a measure that he would not boast beyond, that he would not go beyond that particular measure. And the word measure in the Greek means metron. And the word metron just simply means a spiritual jurisdiction. It's a carved out place that an individual has power and authority to operate in. Think law enforcement. And I know that many of us, we understand law enforcement. We've seen police officers. We've been around police officers. Some of us may have seen them in action. But when you think about this word metron, I believe that law enforcement agents serve as a great example of what this doctrine, what this concept is all about. Though they have a badge, though they have a gun, there is a name that's written on the uniform that they wear, and that name speaks of an area. They could be law enforcement agents of a particular city or a particular county, particular state, or federal. But whatever that name, whatever that city that's on their uniform, that speaks to their jurisdiction. It speaks to the area that they are able to carry out their responsibilities, and they are empowered to do it. But once they get out of that particular line, once they get out of those particular borders, then their power and their authority ceases. Many of us have been led to believe that as believers or just as people, as followers of God, that our metron, that our spiritual authority can be carried out anywhere at any time. And to be perfectly honest, that's not true. The fact of the matter is that each and every one of us have been given a metron, a particular area that God has carved out for us to walk in spiritual power and authority. So that's the first thing that I want you to know, is that every person that is a follower of Christ has been given a metron. You've been given an area that God has empowered you and equipped you to operate in. And no, you can't go to Wikipedia. You can't Google up your jurisdiction. You can't ask another man to show you on the map where your jurisdiction is. Not only does God give you, each and every one of us, a metron, but he's the one that also determines what that metron is, where that area is, and that can only be discerned. One can only know their metron by having it downloaded, by having it revealed to them in the spirit realm. As a matter of fact, Paul in Acts chapter 17, when he's ministering in Athens on Mars Hill, and he encounters these philosophers, it talks about how Paul walked through the area, and when he was given audience to speak to this particular guild, this philosophical guild, he began to talk to them about how religious and superstitious they were, by way of him discerning all of the different gods and all of the different things that he saw just walking through the city. But then he went on to say that he even saw this subscription that was made to an unknown God. But he said, but this day I'm actually going to reveal that God to you. And so and he begins to talk about that God. And then he makes this statement that each and every one of us, God is the one that determined our appointed times, as well as our habitation or our boundaries. And so it talks about how God is the one that determined what generation that each and every one of us will be born in. He also determined our origin, our biological, our natural birthplace, our countries, the place that we were born in, but also where you are right now. God is the one that determined that, right? And so just like God determined what generation we would come in, but also where we would live, where we would come from, that's so it is in the natural, so it is in the spirit. So not only has God did that for us naturally, but he's also did that for us spiritually as well. And many times you can find yourself doing the right thing, but in the wrong place. And so it's important for you and I to discover what our metron is, to discover where is our spiritual borders, where is the place, where is the region, where is the area that God has assigned to us, because it's in that area that we can walk around in full confidence that no matter what we do for God, it will succeed. And we can look at ourselves in the mirror one day and know in our hearts that not only were we successful, but we were actually successful in doing the correct thing. And that's what is important to God. Not just acquiring, not just being successful, but also being successful in doing the right thing, the right time, at the right place. Because just like the servant who had the 2 talents as well as the 5 talents, when they took what God gave them and they did something with it, when they put what God gave them to work, not the one with the 1 talent, obviously we know his plight, we know his fate, we know his end, but the other 2, they put what God gave them to work and they became successful in doing the right thing, and they heard this pronouncement, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." I don't know about you, but that's something that I thirst, I quest, I hunger to hear from my Father. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. So just like you, my goal is to make sure that I understand what my metron, or where my metron is, get in it, and with everything that I have down on the inside of me, release what God has placed on the inside of me. And if I do that, I know not only I will be successful, but if you do it, you will be successful as well. And many of you are saying right now, that's speaking to exactly where I am. That's light bulbs are starting to come on. I'm starting to receive different things. I'm starting to feel a certain way about a particular area, a particular city, a particular state. By hearing this, that's why I'm glad you tuned in, because God wants all of us to be successful. And beloved, I love you enough to want you to be successful as well. God bless you.